Welcome to the Anime Realm channel. This is my recap for the anime called Undead Unluck. If you like my recaps, please consider subscribing. The story begins with a girl who has just finished her favorite romance manga series, and since no further volumes are being made and the series got cancelled, she decides this is as good a time as any to go commit suicide. However, before she can ease herself into the afterlife, she gets called out to by this guy behind her. He tells her that what she's doing is dangerous. She believes this guy is trying to stop her from jumping to her death, so she pulls out a knife and threatens him to stay away from her because she needs to die. She also says that if he comes any closer, he will contract a deadly disease that will surely kill him. But as she is saying all this while pointing a knife at him, the guy just walks forward into the knife. The girl screams because she doesn't want to murder anyone before she dies, but the guy just grabs her and says, "Kids these days don't know how to do things anymore. If you're going to jump off a bridge, you've got to do a flip." He then lifts her by her face and plops her down on the other side of the bridge. For someone who just got stabbed, he seems to be acting very lively and asks what the deadly disease is going to be. Will it be like liquefying organs or spontaneous dismemberment? However, it was much worse than that. The guy falls onto a train and splats on the windshield. The girl sits there and cries because she has done it again and dragged someone down to their death because she took too long to end herself. However, as she is still crying, the dude's head comes rolling up to her and is somehow still alive. It tells her that he finally understands what she meant by deadly disease as he repairs his body and regenerates fully. However, the clothes do not come with a package, causing the girl to get scared and punch him in the nuts. Don't worry, those will grow back too. She runs away from him thinking he is a zombie, but he doesn't want to let her go and grabs her, saying he isn't a zombie but rather he is undead. He heard her mention that her disease was unlucky, so he wanted to ask a few questions about that. But soon after, the police begin to close in on the location due to reports of a dude going splat on a train. And right now he's a naked man carrying a screaming girl, so he needs to get out of here. He uses his blood as rocket boots and propels himself into the sky. Later, he explains how he was flying with his blood, and he tells her that he regenerated his legs at high speed and shot them out to use the momentum to fly. But she wasn't paying attention to his explanation because she was trying to escape. However, he didn't bring her up here just to let her go, so he dangles her by her legs and says he still has some questions to ask. She's afraid that her unluck will trigger again if he keeps touching her, but it's quite a long way down if he lets go. She says it's fine since she was planning on dying today anyway, but after a brief trip on the merry-go-round, she is too scared to continue and promises to tell him everything she knows about unluck. She explains that when she was 8, her parents were about to go on a business trip together. They said they'd be gone for a week, so she hugged them goodbye and gave them kisses. However, an hour later, the plane went boom. From that day, anyone who came in direct contact with her skin got hurt in some way or another, so she began dressing to cover up as much as possible. After saying this, the guy takes the opportunity to slip his hand under her shirt for some direct boob skin contact, while still butt naked, to test out the unlucky effects. Sure enough, somehow a plane with a load of bananas fell right on top of the guy. The girl takes the opportunity to escape while the guy is still regenerating, but she slips on a banana and goes off the edge of the building. As she falls, she is in disbelief that her life is going to end because of a banana. She can't get to do anything fun or interesting, never fell in love, and No Game No Life finally got a second season. She can't die yet. Luckily, the guy doesn't plan on letting her die so easily and flies down with his meat propulsion, sticking a bone in the wall to slow their fall. The guy tells her that he won't be letting her go so easily since he has finally found someone who might be able to put an end to his absurdly long life. If he can figure out what makes her unluck tick, he might be able to use it to create the biggest stroke of unluck she has ever seen and maybe actually kill him for good. So now, he plans to take her to his hideout to find a way to end himself. Meanwhile, some people in suits are watching him fly off and have been given the order to apprehend the girl after they have confirmed her abilities. Back at the hideout, they haven't introduced themselves to each other yet, but the guy is Andy and the girl is Fuko. Andy has already tested out the change in effect with duration of contact, so now he wants to move on to the surface area and asks her to take off all her clothes from maximum surface area. Unsurprisingly, she runs off. She can handle him touching her to kill himself, but she is not mentally prepared to strip naked for him. He chases her and tells her that this is only because she hasn't fully explained the ability to him, but she just doesn't want to tell him. While running, she gets her jacket caught on a hook, and it comes off, revealing that she has that Rapunzel kind of hair. He can't help it since anyone who tries to cut her hair would only end up dying because of her. Hearing this, Andy grabs her chin, pulls out a hairdresser bag, and begins to cut her hair. She's worried since Unluck will activate as soon as he lets go of her, but he says he'll be fine. She asks him if he used to be a hairstylist, and he says he was one ages ago. He finishes off her haircut, and she is really happy with it. But now that the haircut is done and he has been holding her for 15 minutes, something big must be coming. A few seconds later, Andy's head is chopped off, but not because of any natural disaster, but rather because of the soup guys. They came to apprehend Fuko and were prepared with a capsule to keep Andy from regenerating. Fuko was about to tell him to leave her because she believed they came here to rescue her, but she couldn't be more wrong. They're just here to capture them for themselves. They are an organization that is meant to keep the people with strange powers like Andy and Fuko in check, and Fuko was high on their priorities list. Her power sucks the luck out of anyone that touches her. However, a layer of clothes seems to prevent that effect. Her powers are certainly dangerous, and what's worse is that they have no other applications aside from killing people, which is what they believe Andy was trying to do. However, Fuko corrects them and says the only person Andy wanted to kill was himself. The leader of the group gets agitated and tells her to shut up, or he might just kill her anyway since her power is already really dangerous. But she continues to speak and thanks Andy for actually touching her without fear, and being relatively kind to her. Just then, the unluck from Andy touching her from before kicks in and strikes where his head is, and also the guy that was holding the capsule. They fall into a hole, and Andy is now free to regenerate his body and do as he pleases once more. The leader tells the others not to panic. Even if they can't kill him outright, they can still cut him up into tiny pieces and possibly reseal him again. After all, he is still only an amateur when it comes to fighting. However, that is where they are wrong. Sure, right now Andy is only an amateur, but that is only because he gave himself brain damage to repress some memories to save on disk space. However, if he simply regenerates that part of his brain, then 100 years of fighting experience comes rushing back to him. And with all that experience and an immortal body, no one could ever dream of winning a fight against him. Though the soup cronies were able to do some considerable damage to Andy, he easily slashed and killed them. After that, he blocks all the memories again because his brain is starting to lag from overload. The soup man realizes that Andy would surpass him in all aspects if he tried to confront him. So he switches to some more underhanded measures and threatens to kill Fuko if Andy doesn't cut off his head and toss it over without regenerating at all. Andy is disappointed that he doesn't get to fight the guy anymore, but if Fuko's life is on the line, then he is going to comply with the ultimatum. Fuko tells him to give up on her and just take care of himself. It's better if she dies anyway since she has hurt so many people with her powers. But Andy doesn't give a damn about her opinion. He decides to save her life, and that's what he's going to do, even if it ends up with him in some underground laboratory. Fuko is touched that he would be willing to risk his freedom for her despite only having known her for a total of 2 hours. So she decides to give Andy what he wants. She knows how to trigger the worst outcome of unluck, and to do that, she breaks out of her captor's grasp and jumps in the air to kiss Andy's head as it falls to the ground. Andy realizes what she just did, so he holds the soup guy in place and tells Fuko to get the hell out of there quickly, as he waits for what is about to come with a huge smile on his face. A freaking meteorite falls from the sky and right onto the building, blowing it up along with Andy and the soup guy. Safe to say that Andy's hideout has been destroyed, and Fuko sits there upset that Andy might be gone for good this time. However, he walks out of the building missing a few teeth and a sword in his chest, and thanks her for the help back there. She finally introduces herself as Fuko and asks him for his name. But he doesn't remember since that was part of the repressed memories. Since she can't have him going around without a name, Fuko comes up with Andy for him as a name, and he is fine with it. Andy comments on how one kiss caused so much damage to him. He says it'll probably do a lot more if they smashed, and hearing that, Fuko is back to running again. Fuko had always felt like she deserved to die after all the death and destruction her ability had caused over the years. But after meeting Andy, she felt that she had finally found someone whom she could hang around without having to worry about accidentally killing him. But right now, she's starting to regret hanging around him. Andy has her backed against a wall, with his meat still hanging out of mind, and once again asks to smash because that will likely cause unluck to trigger in the most spectacular manner imaginable. But his theory fails to take Fuko's feelings into account, and she is left racking her brain to figure out something to say before Andy is done with his stretches. Before Andy can go balls deep, Fuko blurts out that unluck is based on likability, meaning the more she likes the person, the worse the unluck is going to be. Aside from Andy and her parents, Fuko has also kissed her grandfather, whom she was really scared of, and all he got as a result was a broken ankle. He did end up dying 3 years later, but that was too much time for it to have been related to her unluck. So, that proves that the more she likes the person, the worse the unluck is going to be. And with that being the case, if Andy tries to smash her right here and now, she's going to hate him forever, and he'll only get mediocre deaths from it. That made sense to Andy, and the new information caused a change to his original plans. So, he says he can't let her die for a while and asks her to follow him. Fuko follows him, and she gets taken to an armory, which Andy just has with all the time that he has been alive. He has had enough time to build bases all across the world for whatever he needs. This way, he can deal with those soup guys if they ever come after him. Now that they are here, Andy gets down to business and has Fuko suited up with armor against basically all forms of attacks imaginable. This is a countermeasure in case those soup guys go after her again, and after the failed attack yesterday, they will come again. Fuko thinks they might have been scared off by the literal meteor falling from the sky yesterday. And while that may be true for normal people, it doesn't apply to them because they have teams of people who can defy the rules of the world, like Fuko and Andy, negators. After the fight, they now know exactly what their abilities can do, while Andy and Fuko are still left in the dark about what they are going to have to face. So, they are at a serious disadvantage. 50 years ago, the negators caught Andy and did quite a number on him, having him spend 10 years in some lab while they dissected him over and over. Fuko is shocked by Andy being over 50 and asks how old he is, but Andy interjects and asks what she thinks they will do after they have captured her or how many people will die, while they try to figure out the rules of unluck. They might cut off her fingers to see if the unluck still works with severed body parts, or even forcibly smash in different positions to see what happens. They are much worse than Andy, so she has to rely on him to protect her from them, and thus they go on a road trip together. Fuko asks Andy if there is anywhere in particular that they are heading to, but he says they are just going where the road takes them, or in short, running forever or until they run out of gas. Fuko is worried because that just means they will eventually get caught when they can't run away anymore. So, she starts to think Andy would be better off if he just left her behind because he'll be stuck in a lab again if he gets caught. However, Andy has no intention of leaving her behind before she falls in love with him and can get him killed with unluck. Fuko appreciates him protecting her, but she says she won't be falling in love with him. However, Andy is sure it will eventually happen. While Fuko is still arguing with him, Andy notices a crack forming in the sky and realizes that the organization has arrived. 50 years ago, the ones who caught him shot out from one of those warp gates. So, he tells Fuko to die stuck as the Union busts through. A giant robot smashes Andy into the ground and tosses Fuko into a nearby wall with all the force that it uses. But she is mostly unharmed, thanks to all the protective gear that she has on. However, I can't see the same for Andy. Fuko tries to run to Andy's side, but gets pulled back by some unknown force and finds herself stuck to this guy. She looks up at him and realizes he is one of the enemies, so she tries to get away from him in a scene that can easily be taken out of context. The guy tells the robot that he has managed to capture Fuko, so the robot tells him to kill her like they were instructed to, while he captures Andy. However, the blue-haired dude doesn't want to kill Fuko yet because she is so cute. Meanwhile, Andy escapes the robot's fist and is about to strike him down with his sword, but he suddenly stops moving altogether. Fuko thinks the guy holding her captive is the cause of Andy's sudden loss of movement, but as Andy is punched backward, he regains his movement and realizes that both of these guys have external restraining type abilities. The big guy paralyzes a person's body, and the blue-haired guy can take control of your body, though Andy doesn't know exactly what they are negating to pull it off. The blue-haired guy praises him for figuring out that much of their abilities in an instant, but says knowing that isn't going to change much for him. Andy walks up to the robot and gets punched in the face, but after the punch, he can move again and returns the punch to the robot. This is how he will fight the ability. He will get hit and then hit back once his movement returns to him. The blue-haired guy thinks that is quite the crazy way of fighting, especially since Andy can still feel all the pain from getting hit. Fuko asks the blue-haired guy, whose name is Shen, if they are doomed to get hunted down by the Union forever, and Shen tells her that, sadly, it's true, especially since after that meteor strikes, her danger level rose from a 5 to an 8 out of 10. So no matter where she and Andy go, they will always have someone coming after them. But that is still assuming that they can manage to escape them here. If that is the case, then Fuko asks why he and the robot aren't being hunted, and he explains that they are special cases because they are part of the 10 members of a special team in the Union. Once you become a part of this team, you are exempt from all pursuits under the condition that you commit yourself to carry out missions that are assigned to you. However, there are still some tests that need to be done before one can join the team. However, as the robot is about to kill Fuko, he tells her that there are no open spots in the team, and as long as there are no vacancies, there will be no new additions to the team. But just before she can be crushed under his fist, Andy speeds through to save her and says it's a great idea to join the union since they won't be hunted down afterward. And if it only accepts new members when there are vacancies in the team, it just needs to get rid of these two to make some space. Once they join the team, he doesn't know what they will have them do. But he is sure of one thing: as long as Fuko is with him, he is not going to let her die, nor is he going to hand her over to anyone, making her blush and possibly start falling for him. She takes off her glove and touches Andy before running away. However, before she leaves, she turns around to tell Andy that the unluck is probably going to be massive, but it's not because she's in love with him or anything. Baka, she continues speaking as Andy backs up closer to the two, and then a giant truck comes barreling towards them, and they are all engulfed in flames. Andy flies out and regenerates his body, but the other two also emerge unscathed from the inferno. Since that didn't work, Andy moves on to his next plan of action and has to figure out exactly what their powers are as he escapes into a building. From what he has been able to see thus far, the big guy negates all of Andy's movements once he gets into battle stance. His power is likely unavoidable, but Andy doesn't have any information on Shen, so he thinks it will be best to wait until he has figured out his ability. But after that long thought process, he realizes that there are several sticks of dynamite beeping as a countdown reaches 0. The building collapses, and Fuko is left wondering if this was part of her unluck or if it was just a coincidence. In the rubble, the big guy gets up and grumbles about how he would have been dead if it weren't for his suit that protected him. He wants to hurry up and get the mission over with, so he scans around and finds Andy's hand in the rubble. However, it is a trap, and Andy appears behind him, using his finger as a gun, and shoots him in the head, and eliminates him permanently. Shen finally finds Andy and sees that his teammate is dead, but Andy still wants to fight, even though he has already secured himself a seat at the table because he still needs to get one for Fuko. Fuko also arrives later and finds Andy fighting with Shen, but every blow Andy hits is blocked perfectly. Andy notices that Fuko is holding his sword, so he asks her to toss it over to him so that he can use it to strike Shen down. However, before Andy can hit Shen, he suddenly stops dead in his tracks. Fuko thinks things are getting bad, so she tries to touch Shen to use her unluckily, but he dodges that as well. Shen tells them that his power affects their minds, so there is no way that they will be able to hit him or escape from him. But since his teammate is dead, there is a seat open at the table, so he asks which one of them will be joining. Andy says if that's what it has come to, then it will be Fuko who joins them, and he is fine with getting shipped off to some lab again. Fuko thinks it is ridiculous of him to give himself up so easily, but he says he'll find a way to break out eventually, and even if she's an old lady by then, he will find her before she dies. Shen thinks everything has been settled and asks Fuko to come with him, but she throws down her jacket and tells him to look away for 10 minutes. He isn't going to do that because that would undo his ability, but she says he has to, because she's about to Netflix and chill with Andy, minus the Netflix part. Thanks to her unluckily, she has never had any sort of romantic relationship, so now that someone is willing to risk their freedom for her sake, she feels that it's the least she can do to give him the best shot he has got at getting killed by unluck. And if that means they have to raw dog it right here on the pavement, then so be it. Shen finds this whole situation hilarious and gives them an option so they can stay together. If they can manage to kill one of the other members of the 10, then they will both be able to join. He tells them that in Russia, 3 days from now, there will be another one of them there to investigate one such occurrence negator. So if they can manage to kill that guy, then they're all set. But there will still be others coming after them in that time. With that, he takes his leave, and they have their next destination set. But neither of them has passports, so they'll be hitching rides along the way. Andy also finally asks Fuko how old she is, to which she answers 18, and he says great because that means she is allowed to drink over there. So after they're done, it'll be vodka party time. Meanwhile, there is a girl in a satellite space station, who uses its cameras to look down on Earth and find a yacht with Andy and Fuko inside. Andy is enjoying the whole ride, as he got the yacht modified to make it go way faster than normal, And I can't say the same for Fuko. She's curled up under her seat because she is still afraid that other Union members will be hunting them the entire time they are on their way to Russia. However, Andy doesn't care about any of that. He didn't pull his boat out of storage just so she could cower in fear under the chair. He pulls her out and tells her to have fun. That's an order. In the end, all of Fuko's cowering was for a good reason, as they are attacked by the Union members out at sea. And Andy is forced to take control of the wheel to dodge the incoming missile strikes. Fuko is sure that they are doomed since there is no way a boat can outrun a jet. But Andy doesn't seem too worried. In the worst case scenario, they can just use unluck to blast out of here with another natural disaster. She yells that it doesn't work like that, and unluck isn't some convenient attack. But Andy tells her that it's all about how you use your ability to your advantage. He grabs a live grenade and explains that his ability can be used for a lot more than just death prevention. In this case, if he partially cuts off his arm and then regenerates a new one in the same spot, he can fire it out of his hand with a grenade in it. The grenade hand blows up the jet, and Fuko thinks they are in the clear. But Andy reminds her that they still have to kill one member of the Union with the same gold emblem that Shen had, which is most likely the indicator that the person is part of the 10 negators of the Union. He has a good idea of who some of those negators are. For one, there is the person who made the indestructible katana that Andy has unbreakable. Another one is the crazy scientist who experimented on him after he was captured 50 years ago. And the person who captured him, the last girl, can create invisible barriers from nothing, which was how she was able to capture Andy in the first place. She caught his head in a barrier and left him with no space to regenerate. So it's going to be pretty bad if he has to face her. Still, he will face her regardless of the difficulty. If it comes down to it, he's not going to let anyone keep them from their goal. And he still has the option of activating unluck in the worst case scenario. Fuko still disagrees that unluck cannot be used in this way. But as another jet approaches, Andy says he's going to have to get a feel for the limits of unluck before they get into a really bad situation. Fuko hears this and realizes that it means Andy is going in for another round of touching her. Meanwhile, we see that girl from the space station looking down and talking to herself about how much she loves Andy. She fires down some of her invisible barriers to Earth and destroys the boat instantly. Andy finds himself in the water and wonders what could have attacked them. However, before he can worry about that, he has to think about Fuko and rescuing her from drowning. He finds her trapped under the wreckage and swims down towards her to save her before she dies. He wedges himself under the wreckage and uses the force of his quick regeneration to create enough space to pull her out. He starts swimming to the surface, but on the way notices something that gives him an idea. He gets Fuko to a floating piece of the boat and resuscitates her, before telling her to put her hands up as they are about to be caught. The jet shines a spotlight on them and asks if Andy intends to surrender. He says that he intends to do so, but he's just buying some time for his plan. He wants to use unluck to get out of this, and it will help them understand how it operates a little better. So far, every time unluck has occurred, it pulled things in from a great distance away, like the lightning bolt and meteorite. But what was so special about these times, you ask? They were both situations where the contact between Fuko and Andy was of great value to her, so it had to pull in something proportional to the resulting stroke of unluck. And this time, he has found something that should be proportional to the unluck. So that is what is likely going to happen. But hearing Andy mention this, she is confused, because she hasn't had Andy touch her yet. But that's when Andy tells her that he had to give her CPR since she had drowned and her double Ds were in the way, so he moved them. She is greatly embarrassed to find out that Andy saw and touched her, but then Andy tells her that even after the chest compressions, she still wasn't waking up, so he performed mouth-to-mouth on her. Fuko's embarrassment reaches a boiling point, and so does the volcano that they are currently sitting on top of, as it blasts them upwards and onto the jet. Now that he's within range, Andy switches over to Demon Slayer mode for a bit, and pulls off a sword strike that kills the pilot in the jet. But at the same time, he makes sure not to cut up the cockpit. So as the jet falls out of control, he climbs into the cockpit with Fuko and uses it to escape. With that, they now know that they just need to identify something that could be used by unluck and have a proportional amount of contact to trigger it. Thanks to that, they are still free and even got a new means of transportation out of it. With this, they can make it to Russia quickly, so they go full throttle. However, by morning, the jet initiates a self-destruct sequence since the people at Union have probably figured out that they stole the jet. Due to this, Andy and Fuko have to eject to avoid it, but are now falling through the sky. Andy is still smiling though since he has a trick up his sleeve to land safely, or safely for Fuko at least. He lands on the ground, but breaks every single bone in his body in order and throws Fuko up to shield her from the impact. Then he just keeps running like nothing happened. Now that they've landed, he tells Fuko to keep her head down, because the negator could be here any minute now. But Fuko is too mesmerized by the beautiful landscape before her. This is the first time Fuko has ever been overseas since she became a recluse after discovering her unluck. So Andy tells her she can have some time to enjoy it if she wants. The Union is more of a secret organization, so they likely won't try anything while the public is around. He tells her that he's going to go track down one of his old war buddies to see if they can help them if it comes down to it. Before he goes, Fuko asks Andy if the person who comes here to investigate is sane. Then maybe they could talk it out, but he says he'll just kill them. He still needs to get a spot on the 10 for himself, so anyone careless enough to be reasonable in a situation like this isn't going to be alive. On a side note, Andy asks Fuko if she has any food that she doesn't like, because an old friend of his has a restaurant that he wants to go to, so when he gets back, that is what they'll do. But until then, she should just have some fun for once. Unfortunately, Fuko doesn't know much about this fun thing that he is talking about, and she definitely can't interact with the locals since touching her would kill them, and she doesn't speak Russian. However, on the beach, she bumps into a girl painting, and it turns out to be the spaceship girl with the force fields. However, Fuko doesn't know that. She doesn't seem to recognize Fuko but can tell that she is from Japan, which she loves. The girl points out that she is wearing a uniform that looks very similar to a Japanese school uniform, but Fuko wouldn't know about that since she never went to high school. She notices the girl's painting and comments on how pretty it is, prompting the girl to pull out another canvas and ask Fuko to paint with her. While Fuko has painted before, she doesn't consider herself a good painter, so she is going to decline the offer. But then she remembers Andy telling her to have fun, and this would probably be fun. The two spend the evening painting, and the girl strikes up a conversation, asking Fuko if she likes things that change or things that stay the same. She loves things that stay the same and aren't swayed by the things around them, which is why she loves art so much. Fuko doesn't know how to answer a question like that, so she takes a little time to think about it, and they keep painting together. By nightfall, Fuko is finally done with her painting and shows it to the girl, but she is confused by the bright lights that Fuko painted around the moon. We learn that in this world, stars don't exist at all, but Fuko thought the night sky would look better with more lights in the sky, so she added some. She also has an answer to the girl's question about change. Up until 4 days ago, she had been stuck the same way for years, but then she met this odd guy, and a whole lot of stuff happened, including some groping, kidnapping, explosions, near-death experiences, and more explosions. But through all that, Fuko was able to change herself for the better. With that in mind, she would have to say that she appreciates change. The girl doesn't agree with Fuko's answer, but says she understands what Fuko means. And as she does this, she walks out onto the lake and just stands on the water. She then pulls a big chunk of water out and has it levitating in the air, confusing and shocking Fuko. Andy then comes running out to the beach and tries to slash at the girl, but she's able to block it and pushes Andy back. As he falls, he calls her Gina and tells her she's going a little heavy on the makeup, before sticking his landing next to Fuko. Fuko asks who the girl is, and he explains that she is the one who captured him 50 years ago. This means that Gina is at least above 60 right now. She says she received a briefing on what is going on here and knows they came here to try and kill her so they can get her spot on the 10 seats. But if they want to try and kill her, she's not going to make it easy for them. Fuko gets on Andy's back as they prepare for battle. Instead of an attack, Gina goes in for a hug, but Andy isn't interested in embracing his opponent and draws his sword. Gina finds him mean for not wanting to reunite after 40 years and attacking her the first chance he gets. But before anything else can happen, Fuko asks if she is the same one who caught Andy 50 years ago, and after a brief pause, she confirms, saying she caught and supervised him while he was held captive by the Union. That doesn't make much sense to her since Gina looks to be the same age as her, but Andy chimes in and says she was 16 back then, so she's got to be at least 66, right? But you should never bring up the age of the 60-year-old high school girl. She uses her powers to cover up Andy's mouth, and with no other way to release her hold, he chops off part of his face. Then Gina gets bad and tries kissing Andy's dismembered lips, but he disintegrates it before a new kink tag can be created. Andy regenerates his face and tells Fuko he needs to figure out a counter to Gina's power. But seeing him so close to her, Gina yells at Fuko that she fell in love with Andy first. When they first met, it was with her as the hunter and him as the hunted. She succeeded in capturing him, but all the seats at the table were taken, so Andy was locked up in a cell. Back then, she went to see him and apologized for capturing him, since she was forced to follow orders. But Andy told her not to worry about it. He lost their fight, and he has nothing to hate her for. But he tells her that he will eventually break out, and when he does, he hopes to be able to have a rematch with her, and he'll make sure he doesn't lose a second time. And those words hit with a perfect combo to have her heart doing backflips for him. But 10 years later, he escaped from the cell without so much as saying a word to her, and then proceeded to go into hiding for the next 40 years. But after meeting Fuko, he changed his pattern and started going all over the place, leaving a clear trail that she could follow. While she was saying this, throw some grenades at her. Despite the blaze behind her, Gina remains unharmed, and continues her speech, saying she had agreed to inform her first if he ever happened to find Andy. But then he went and challenged him. But some good came out of that, since the guy Shen came with was killed, which means there's a seat open at the table. And that's all she needs to make sure he keeps his freedom. Andy throws a flashbang, which temporarily blinds her, but despite being disoriented, she still doesn't drop the barrier around her. However, he is at least gathering some good intel on what kind of attacks work on her and what doesn't. Fuko asks about his war buddies who were supposed to help, but he says they are all dead, which makes sense cause they would all have been over 80 by now. But he tells her to relax, because he will figure out what it is that Jenna negates. To do that, he goes through Gina's brain analysis of everything he has seen her do up to this point. First, she solidified the lake, then she used some kind of telekinesis to make it float upward. And lastly, she created invisible barriers and stairs. If he assumes she can solidify stuff, then what is she solidifying to make her barriers? And if it were just some simple hardening, then he should still be able to cut through it with his sword. On the ground, Gina throws her hat towards them, and as it flies past, after destroying Andy's lower body, he sees something that gives him a good idea of what Gina's ability is. He lands. Gina says he's being held back since he has to protect Fuko, and that things would have been a lot simpler if Fuko had just died back on that boat. But Andy doesn't care about that since in his own words, whether it is fate or not, Fuko is his once again, hitting the word jackpot and flustering her. He's not going to let her die until he does so. Gina, a little jealous, is ready to charge and take Andy's head like last time, so she can have him by her side forever. Fuko thinks it's crazy for Andy to challenge her directly after she caught him 50 years ago, but he says he finally figured out what Jenna is negating, so he can beat her now. He puts a grenade in his mouth, making even Gina go, "Wait, what the hell?" and then chops off his head and flings it into the sky. The grenade explodes, covering the beach in Andy juice, and he says he is sure of it now, with his hair still on fire. He says she can negate the change in the physical form of matter, and she uses it to stop the change of air, creating those invisible barriers. Gina isn't too worried about Andy knowing her ability, since there isn't anything he can do against it with undead. And while Andy agrees, he has Fuko here, and he regenerates his body through her shirt, asking for her help. After 3 episodes of craziness, Fuko has resigned herself as the unluck generator, and presses her gold bit firmly against Andy's back for some quality skin contact. Gina is all riled up, seeing Fuko's double D's all over her man, and is enraged because when it comes to her chest size, wait, what chest? She starts saying that Fuko must have seduced him with those airbags of hers, but in 20 years, they're bound to get saggy. However, Fuko declares her melons will be round and plump forever. Gina counters, saying she's the only one that can stay the same forever since her ability is unchanged. However, Andy is quick to point out that her ability is an external target. There are 2 types of abilities, those like Andy's undead, which only affects him, and those like Fuko's unluck, which only affects others. So, with how she has been using change, she is sure it can only affect external targets. She tries to claim she can use it on herself, since she still looks the same after 50 years, but that is just the wonder of makeup making her look the same. As for the chest again, what chest? And even the dummy thick wagon she is dragging has lost some of its suspension. He's pretty sure she can't use her power on any kind of organic material at all. Everything he just said is true, but that is part of the reason she's so angry about it, so she uses her power to slash at Andy. But he dodges and flies off. Andy tells her there's no need to be upset about it, because he likes old lady ass and prefers it like that. but she is still angry. Andy is now able to dodge or attack, since he can see the air hands coming towards him. So that is one problem solved, but he still hasn't figured out how he'll be able to take down the barrier around her. Fuko speaks up because she noticed something, so Andy turns his body around still inside her shirt, and asks her what she saw. She says Gina is angry at Andy, and has a barrier around her for protection, so she's only walking toward them instead of running. And that seems odd. Andy realizes something and tells Fuko she did a great job, noticing while his face is buried in her oppai. He has now figured out how to get to her, so he just needs to find the seed of unluck that could be generated to use it to his advantage. However, as he is flying up, he BNKs his head on something in the sky, and falls to the solid lake. The lasers then shoot out, hitting Andy in the balls, but he's fine regardless. Gina reminds them that she was here investigating a Uma that is supposed to be hiding out in the area, so she was using her ability to split the island into chunks to find it. She was only doing this because she had a quota to meet, but since Fuko and Andy are here, she doesn't need to worry about filling that quota anymore. So she plans to end things now. She wants to be the same as she was back then and to be with the one she loves forever, so no matter how many people she has to hurt, she stays in the organization so she can keep chasing after Andy. Andy can block the incoming blow and hold her off with his sword, saying that if anyone is going to die, then it is going to be him. But Gina tells him there is no way that Fuko would ever be able to handle the heartless tasks that the Union would assign to her, even if she managed to join. Andy notices something about Gina's barrier in the meantime, and finally has his plan all figured out. There is a small hole in the bottom of the barrier, which he uses to walk around, but it's so small that he would only be able to fit his head in there. To use the unlock that Fuko's chest has been charging up on him. But even if he did manage that, Gina would kick him out immediately. So he comes up with a strategy, and dives underwater before resurfacing, and using his blood to cover the barrier and prevent Gina from seeing what they are up to. They then stick the sword under her barrier and flip it over, exposing the hole. As the chance presents itself, Fuko throws Andy's head inside. Gina doesn't have the chance to react, and since Andy is inside the barrier, it will likely be something that is light-based, since the only thing capable of breaking through are light particles, and in this case, that means a death laser from the ship. The beam blows a hole straight through a mountain, and as Fuko watches on, the lake that had been solidified suddenly returns to liquid, meaning Gina's powers have been released. On the shore by the mountains, Andy sits next to a severely wounded Gina and gets on top of her, preparing to finish her off with one of his finger bullets. But Fuko runs up to stop him. He doesn't shoot Gina, but he tells Fuko that she doesn't have much time left to live. She was at the beck and call of the Union and has executed so many people for them, and yet nothing in the world has changed. She thought their mission was to save the world. Maybe she was wrong. She tells them to leave because her anti-aging is wearing off and she doesn't want to be seen like this. But Andy pulls her close for a kiss and tells her a few wrinkles aren't going to make her any less beautiful. Moments later, she dies peacefully. Fuko was incredibly distraught by the death of Gina as she and Andy sat at a table in a closed restaurant. Andy was also devastated and talked about how Gina had always had a death wish. Every time she would visit him in his cell, she would bring up her reservations about the killing she was forced to do, and how she would probably be better off dead. In response, one time Andy told her that once he escaped, he would put her on the top of his hit list if she wanted. At the time, he thought he was going along with a kid's joke and smiled so much at the thought of having someone kill her, but he realized she was serious, so Andy was the next best option. He thanked Fuko for helping him make Gina's wish come true, but Fuko had a wish of her own. She asked him if they could make a change, so that no one is forced to suffer the same fate of murder as Gina. Andy supported her wish to change the Union since he liked the idea, and it would probably score him some affection points with Fuko. The Union would be there to pick them up any minute now. They grabbed their drinks, as they were about to take a drink and toast. Just then, a crack formed above them. This was what Andy was waiting for, as it meant the Union had arrived. They got pulled up by this guy, and found themselves falling through a tube and towards the table. Fuko was still a bit confused by everything, but Andy knew exactly what was going on, and prepared a little welcome present for all the members of the Union. He fired off 8 of his finger bullets at all the members at the table, but these guys are very strong, and they all stopped the shots without any damage. Andy landed in his chair with style, and his drink still in his hand, telling them it would have saved some time if they all just died. Jewish says they were exactly as the reports had stated before inviting them to the Union. We got a little introduction for all the members, though we still didn't know what their negator abilities were. In order of rank, we got Juiz, then Shen and Billy, and the baby they named Phil, then Tatiana and Isshin. Then there was Top and Nico. Fuko and Andy were N9 and 10, and they tried to look cool by hitting the cup against each other. But Andy got punched into a back wall by Tatiana. She was upset that Andy killed Gina, but the leader warned her that fighting between members was forbidden. Andy appreciated the temper that Tatiana had, and it seemed he managed to slice up her hand while she punched him. She repaired her hand and was ready to go for round 2, and all of a sudden, she pointed a laser cannon at Billy, and Andy pointed his sword at Fuko's neck. This was their ability of Juiz, and she asked the two if they were ready to settle down yet. Tatiana apologized since she didn't want to kill Billy, and Billy seemed calm for someone with a death laser at point-blank range. Andy also said he wouldn't fight anymore, and Juiz deactivated her ability. He apologized to Fuko for putting her life in danger just now, but it gave him some insight into the abilities of the union members. They all took their seats, and Juiz called for the meeting to begin as a floating book with teeth called Apocalypse popped out and started giving out quests. Fuko and Andy both had no idea what was going on at the moment, but they just tried to memorize as much information as possible. It showed 6 quests this time, and the first one was Capture the Uma Burn, with a participation count of 6 and a reward of an addition of an 11th seat to the table. Quest number 2 is on to Capture the Eat, with a participation count of 5, where the location of the negator or unburn was the reward. The third quest was the neutralization of the Uma language with a participation count of 1, and a reward for the unification of all the world's languages. As this went on, Andy realized that this must have been the quota that Jenna was talking about. Apocalypse continued, and said that quest number 4 was to capture the negator unseen, participation count of 1, and the reward being the location of the call. Quest 5 was to capture Past, with a participation count of 3, and the location of an item called the Artifact Rebellion as the reward. Finally, quest number 6 was to capture Avuma Spoil, with the reward being the location of the Unrepair. It said they had until the 31st of August to complete all the quests, and if they didn't, then it would result in the addition of the galaxy. But I don't know why he had to move his tongue like that. It orders them to choose, but Fuko is still hung up on the whole galaxy thing. Juiz asks Nico to run an analysis on what quests they will be able to accomplish with their current power, and he plugs himself in real quick to ask ChatGPT. He answers that they would only be reasonably capable of handling quests 1 through 3, and ideally, they should focus their efforts on the first quest, as the addition of an additional seat to the table is a huge benefit. He also suggests that they all give up on trying to catch the last one, as there is no good information on him, and without knowing the limits of his ability, they would like to avoid them. With that decided, Juiz mobilizes all team members to handle quests 1, 2, and 3, despite the penalty that comes with not accomplishing all the quests. Fuko asks, what's with that talking book in the sky? So Top explains that the book is the first artifact ever found on Earth, and every time the round table opens it, it places some ridiculous tasks for them to complete. But if it is cleared, then they will be given a reward. Fuko asks if it is worth going through all the trouble to follow the instructions of the book, which is the same thing that led Gina to death. So she questions why they don't just ignore the book. Juiz speaks up and declares that new rules have been added to the Earth, and once every 3 months, a new rule is applied, again even if they don't do anything. So they decided to do something about it. Only those seated at the round table are allowed to accept quests, and it is too risky to let people with unpredictable powers roam free, which is why she ordered Fuko to be killed. She apologizes for doing that and asks for her cooperation in performing the tasks. Fuko is still greatly against the way of doing things here, so Juiz tells her if she wants to change the way they handle things, then she should become the number 1 and take that position away from her. The rank of a person is decided by who has contributed the most to finishing accomplishments. However, Andy has no time for a chain of commands, and runs up to Apocalypse and asks it which quest is the hardest to complete while prying its mouth open. It bites his hands off and says the 6th one is the hardest, capture the Uma Spoil, and Andy accepts the quest. A few weeks later, Fuko is being dressed by Mui, a girl who is Shen's disciple. She wishes Fuko good luck on the quest, but Fuko asks why she isn't coming with them. Mui explains that she is neither a negator nor a member of the Round Table, so she's not authorized to ever take part in a quest. Since she can't be there directly, she asks Fuko to please take care of Shen while she is there. But Fuko doesn't think she's up for that task, and right then Shen comes and chases around Andy, who doesn't want it put on clothes. He accidentally bumps into Fuko, touching her face, and you know what that means. Magma shoots off the wall and burns all of Andy's life. Luckily, he's still fine, cause he can regenerate easily. Andy doesn't want to wear a suit for a company. However, Andy doesn't know about the features that the suit comes with. There is a bulletproof and laserproof function in the suit. While they were still arguing, someone had attacked the base with the ability to control any article of clothing he wanted, and was heading towards them. His power is to turn into the clothes that one most desires, but once he has bewitched you with the clothes, he takes full control of your body. He punches Andy in the face, but Andy gets back up and headbutts his lights out. However, once the body is unable to move, it will seek out a new host like Venom, and it finds that new host in Mui. It begins battling with Mui's body, and Shen's power won't be effective here because she's being controlled. So Fuko takes matters into her own hands and touches her, causing a brick to fall on her head straight out of. Now that she's unable to move, the Uma tries to go after Fuko, but Andy saves her and has it latch onto him instead. However, it doesn't turn into clothes immediately, because Andy's most desired clothes are ones that regenerate when ripped and come to him when called. The Uma takes it as a challenge and transforms, but gets struck with the unluck from Andy touching Fuko when he saves her. He has now turned into a suit for Andy, and cannot leave him anymore. At the same time, a report comes in on the location of Spoil, so they head out to New York to confront him. So here they are, trucking down the Nevada road in the blistering heat. Fuko was excited to finally get to see some of the United States, and that was part of the reason Andy opted to use a truck instead of a helicopter, because he just had a bunch of them in storage. Late into the evening, Andy asks her if she wants to just ditch the mission for a little bit and head over to Vegas for a good time. However, Fuko is a diligent worker and tells him they need to accomplish their mission before they can go have fun. They must get to. Yeah, Fuko forgot the name of the place they were going. She checks the paperwork to refresh her memory a little and reads the report on the incident that they are responding to. In the city, there were sightings of a walking corpse going around and doing things a corpse shouldn't be able to do. The cause was unknown, but the witnesses to the event were successfully memory wiped to prevent panic. Upon further investigation, it was found that the corpse was a man from a rural part of the country called Longing. Shen pops his head down from the roof to mention that the place is also commonly used to film cowboy movies. But more importantly, Fuko wants to know why he's hanging out on top of that truck. It's a simple story. Andy was trying to leave Shen behind, so he did what any normal person would do in the situation. He jumped onto the top of the truck and stuck his feet through the roof to keep himself attached as they drove for thousands of miles on end. Fuko says it's dangerous for him to be out there like that, so he should come inside. And this kindness brings a tear to Shen's eyes, but a frown to Andy's face. Now that everyone is inside the truck, Fuko asks Shen if the report is related to Spoil. He answers her question with another question, and asks what she thinks a guy named Spoil would be able to do. And it is going to be related to the walking corpse sighting. He has no idea why the corpse went all the way over to New York, but he's sure he will be able to find Spoil if they go to Longing. He and his legion of homemade zombies. Fuko is worried that they won't be able to capture such a monster alive, but Shen tells her not to worry since their reconnaissance team had gone to scope out the town ahead of time and managed to get some audio from when they were putting up a barricade for the town. Fuko asks if the investigation team made it back in one piece, but Shen just stares at her and starts playing the recording. We hear the team talking, and they are putting up the barricade, but we soon hear the sounds of zombies approaching, and the people don't seem to be handling it so well. One got bitten, and then we heard gunshots, so I think it is to assume they won't be making it back in one piece. Or even if they do, it will be with holes in their bodies. The recording has already traumatized Fuko, so she asks Andy what he thinks of the situation. He doesn't give much of an answer, but Shen continues, saying it would be difficult to defeat Spoil unless Andy were to go all out against him. But he says there will be no need to go that far. That night, Fuko can't sleep from all the trauma she experienced that day and is sitting on top of the well thinking. Shen comes up to join her and tells her not to worry, because both he and Andy will take out Spoil, so she won't have to deal with him. However, Fuko still wishes to be able to participate and help them capture Spoil, and Shen questions if she was doing this for the sake of Jenna's dream to bring change to the Union. But Fuko has her reasons for needing to be a part of the team that does this because the reward for capturing Spoil is receiving the location of the negator on repair. And with an ability like Unrepair, it may be able to counter Andy's regeneration and allow him to finally die like he had always wanted to. She apologizes to Shen because he was forced to come along with them since Andy chose this quest by himself. But he says it's not all bad, as since this quest is one of the rather difficult ones, he might get to see the serious version of Andy Victor, the god of victory, and not the lackluster one that we have here. The next day, they arrive at the town of Longing. It is just across the bridge and houses thousands of zombies that are being controlled by Spoil. They arrive at the wall, and Shen suggests that they use stealth to sneak in. But Andy goes, "Who needs stealth? I got a rocket launcher," and proceeds to blast a hole straight through the wall. Dozens of zombies come pouring out of the town, and as per their job description, they must handle all anomalies. Andy asks whether it would be possible for them to return to normal, but they have already been altered physically, so there is no way they would be able to return to normal people. That tells Andy all he needs to know about the situation, and he prepares to ram his way through the crowd, with no time to spare. The truck plowed through the bodies like water, and as the truck came to a halt, Andy came flying out the window and chopped his arm and leg off, before landing in the middle of them with his sword in hand. He yells out that he is going to kill all of them, but if any of them still have the mental capacity to tell him where Spoil is, then they better duck to avoid the incoming attack. He gets into a stance and, with his arm cut off, he begins to spin in a circle and starts chopping off all the heads of the zombies, and Shane praises Andy, who is sitting next to an airbagged Fuko. After Andy is done with the massacre, he finds that there is one zombie that isn't completely mindless yet. The zombie girl walks alongside Andy as he tells the others that he has found someone to take them to Spoil. Fuko is just going along with the craziness at this point and is about to get down from her seat to follow Andy. But Shen has something to say first. This place is dangerous, and Shen had warned Andy to be cautious because they are dealing with a Uma here. Umas is different from negators in the fact that they rule themselves, and are known to completely ensnare people randomly. Negators have to do something to activate their powers, like Shen, meaning to look at a person from a certain distance, and Fuko's unluck activates after she's touched a person. But Uma's has no such restriction, and has an area within which they are guaranteed to hit their opposition if they are within the specified region. He now sees that Andy has a timer on his stomach, which likely means that he will spoil once it reaches 0. However, Andy doesn't seem to mind all that much, since something like this wouldn't be able to kill him, and if it does, then that's okay too, because he wants him to die regardless. Once the timer reaches 0, Andy's body starts to decay, but just as soon as that happens, he regenerates his hand back to normal. Then it decays again, and it becomes clear that the decay is a constant effect. So if that's how things are set up, anyone who enters the town will be turned into a zombie. The zombie girl that Andy is with has something she wants to say. He listens and finds out that the girl knows where Spoil is, but she has a condition for her to tell him what he wants to know. So Andy picks her up and tells the others that he's going to get married. It was the zombie girl's last wish to get married and have a honeymoon. So, after Andy is done clapping the zombies' cheeks, he will be back so they can go find Spoil. However, as Shen is yelling out to Andy to remember that the objective of the mission is to capture Spoil and not kill him, a kid pops his head out of an underground tunnel, which Fuko sees but doesn't mention to Shen, and starts chasing after the boy. And before Shen knew it, she was gone. She runs down into the tunnel to find the kid, but Shen catches up to her and tries to get her to think calmly. If she goes any farther, she's going to get herself spoiled, and if that kid already run down that far, then that means he has already been afflicted. The boy says he's correct while pointing a gun at the two of them. They have been cursed to spoil as well, but their timers are just longer than the others. They fear outsiders because the only people who would come here are those who want to eradicate all the zombies, and that would include them because they are about to become zombies. That is why they're standing right outside the area where the curse would affect them. Well, Fuko doesn't think his logic is wrong, so to prove him wrong, she uses her ordinary teenage legs to dash forward and grab the boy who is pointing a gun at her, afflicting herself with the spoiled curse. And since everyone is doing it, then Shen does it as well. Back to Andy. He has officially gotten married to the zombie girl, and she thanks him for making her dream come true. So now she has one final request for him: kill that monster that is doing this to them. Andy says his mission was to capture that thing and not kill it, but who is he to refuse the request of the bride on her wedding day? He slashes at it, forcing Spoil to reveal its true form and attack. The building around him crumbles, but the rest of the zombies inside protect him, showing that they still have some level of thought left in them. Spoil is standing across from him, so Andy uses his hands to strike a bell and knock it into Spoil's face, alerting all the other zombies to the location of the person who did this to them, and having them come for their revenge. And he is ready to kill that thing once and for all. Back underground, Fuko introduces herself to a boy named Ken. Ken is the oldest in his group, so he feels like he needs to be strong for all his little friends. Fuko explains that they are from the Union, and they are there to help them. So Ken tells her what happened just 1 week earlier. A dark ball appeared in the middle of the city and started speaking. Some floating head thing took a liking to the place because it seemed like it would be easy to spoil. It decided to start with the people first, so numbers suddenly appeared on everyone's stomachs. Everyone began turning into zombies. So Ken's teacher, who we see as Andy's bride, brought them to safety. She left the kids underground, but they were all worried about her. She told them not to worry, even though we saw that she was already infected. She told them that she wasn't going to die until she found a great guy to walk her down the aisle. Being the good teacher she is, she told the kids to never forget their dreams, and she bid farewell to them as she was beginning to spoil them. Ken is pretty traumatized, but he goes to check on the little girl named Mai as she is crying. Mai's countdown is nearing 0, so Ken does his best to assure her that everything will be okay. He reminds her about her dream to become a florist, and she remembers that she wants to sell sunflowers. Those are the same flowers that their teacher loved, and Mai just wants to give their teacher lots of sunflowers as a surprise. Surprisingly, Mai's countdown, instead of hitting 0, goes way up instead. Ken points out that he told them what happened, and just now showed them how to raise the countdown, so now he wants Fuko to help them. Fuko promises to do so, but they begin to hear that something big is happening above them. It's Andy, and he's busy slicing up spoil. Shen squeezes his giant neck through a door in the ground and has a peek at what's going on. The spoiled humans are trying to get their revenge, and are shockingly fighting side by side with Andy. The zombies aren't contributing much to the fight, but Shen assumes that this must be Andy's way of being nice to them. Andy throws his wife to Shen so he can defeat Spoil, since the wedding isn't over yet. And Ken tells the other little nerds that their teacher is back. He gets all their hopes up, but Fuko gets sad when she realizes that a terrible thing has happened to such a nice person. All the kids greet their now zombified teacher, and little Mai wants to bandage up her beloved teacher's arm. Fuko is then shocked when she hears the zombified teacher say thank you. Just then, a dumb zombie bumps into Fuko. She is fine, but she touched the zombie with her skin. Andy is busy with Spoil, but he notices that the zombie affected by Fuko's unluck manages to have the curse hit Spoil with a falling sign. Of course, this gives Andy an idea, so he tells all the zombies that they will be changing up their strategy. Andy points to Fuko and tells all the zombies to go touch her. This will essentially turn them all into bombs, so they will be sure to do more damage than what they have been doing so far. Fuko is certain that not even zombies would sacrifice themselves like that, but she is wrong. The kid's teacher doesn't even hesitate to touch her. Fuko tries to fight it at first, because it's just too sad, as she knows how nice of a person the teacher is. But she eventually understands. The teacher is willing to sacrifice herself for everyone, so Fuko touches her. Ken, just as he sees his beloved teacher running into danger, he tries to stop her, but Shen just uses his ability to stop him instead. Fuko warns that her unluck is coming, and it's going to be a big one. Andy watches it all and points out that he always knew she was the perfect bride for him. The teacher sadly lets out a scream of determination and imagines sunflowers all around her as she makes her way to Spoil. Spoil takes hold of her, and no one can bear to watch. The big dumb monster falls victim to Fuko's unluck as it trips and falls right on top of a gunpowder shop. The explosion is huge, and we sadly see that the teacher's wedding dress is burned away. Ken calls out to his teacher, but it's not safe as the fight is not over. Spoil is getting weaker though, so Andy unites everyone by telling them it's all of them versus the monster. Fuko refocuses and tells all the zombies to come and get some of this unluck. The large crowd stampedes past her, and she does her best to touch as many zombies as she can, applying unluck everywhere. Shen has the kids wait in their little hole and sees that Fuko is hard at work applying her unluck. Their plan seems to be working, as Spoil is getting bombarded with bad luck, and Andy encourages everyone to keep up the intensity. Things are going pretty well, but Shen reveals that there is a problem. Both he and Fuko end up cursed, and they need to resolve the issue quickly. Andy is pretty upset, but Fuko begs Andy not to blame Shen, since it was her fault for rushing out. Andy determines that they have no time to capture Spoil, so they have to end its life instead. Shen hates the idea since that would mean they failed the quest, and everyone would be furious with him. There is no time left to talk though, as Fuko goes airborne when Spoil begins inhaling everything in the city. Luckily, our boy is the human blood rocket, so he gets them out of danger, but the same cannot be said about all the poor zombies. Spoil swallowed them all, and does a transformation thing where it reveals its next form. This thing somehow managed to get even uglier, and Shen wonders if Andy has managed to figure out its rules while fighting it. Andy explains that its main body can spoil any organic matter aside from living beings at will. To spoil living things, the timer it puts on them has to reach 0. Things are pretty bad though, as Spoil is even more fierce now, and it uses an insanely powerful beam that decimates the Statue of Liberty instantly. The monster has no clue why it missed its target so badly, but Andy thinks Shen because he somehow did it. Spoil begins to speak, as he realizes that because 3 people have come for him, they must be on a quest. He is upset of course, because this means that the book Apocalypse is interfering with his plans. Back at headquarters, Mui tells our group that Spoil's laser attack decimated anything it touched. By eroding it away, the attack exceeded the parameters of the Spoil rule, so it's incredibly dangerous, and they can't let it hit them at all. Spoil can't understand why they are standing against him, since he is simply returning everything to Earth, and they should appreciate the beauty in that. Spoil attacks with insane speed, so the lasers hit both of our heroes. Andy removes his arm to keep it from spoiling, and Shen just manages to take off his glove. Shen warns of the loss of his difficult-to-order glove, and Andy determines that the attack only works on individual parts. If it hits a live body, it's an instant game over. This means that Dragon the fight out will put him at a severe disadvantage. Andy decides to make it quick, but he is shocked when his body begins to spoil before even touching the thing. Spoil knocks him right out of the air and pummels him into the ground, while taking a beating. Andy realizes that living things spoil just by getting close to them. Spoil sees how tough it is to hurt Andy, and realizes that Andy is the death negator. This is, of course, annoying for Spoil, but he is not concerned. Spoil states that given the rate of its decay, and its second form it does to Andy's regeneration can keep up. Spoil leaves Andy to ride away and turns its attention to Fuko and Shen. Spoil talks like the typical psychopathic bad guy, and tells the two that they should be grateful. Spoil says that his birth has brought with it a beautiful circle of life, and they will have the pleasure of indulging in it while they are still alive. Things are getting pretty intense, but Shen gets an idea and starts running away. He tells the others that he's just stepping away for a second, but Spoil says that running away is futile. Even if Shen runs far beyond its area of attack, the timer will remain. Spoil continues its crazy talk by saying that the world before its birth was so stagnant. Everything grew uglier and uglier without decay, so he brought about a change in the form of Spoil. Thanks to him, living things started fighting to remain longer. They used their brains, and they grew from it. This thing is kind of starting to make sense, and he explains that it's a necessary rule. Spoil points out that humans are the only beings who reject him, labeling him as an evil entity. As these two have a nice little chat, we see that Andy is trying to recover. Spoil can't understand why he is rejected by them, and he points out that humans get so attached to a body that won't even last a century on its own. Fuko has an answer for this monster and says that it's because humans have dreams. People simply live with the bodies they were born with and use them to accomplish their dreams. Fuko is defiant now and says that she's not going to let some rule that it made wreck any of that. Even if her body were to spoil because of him, she has a dream. Because of that, her heart will never spoil. Fuko's dream is to become a normal girl and live her life to the fullest. Until that happens, she will never give up. Revealing her dream causes the timer to go up drastically, and Spoil has no clue what is going on. Fuko rushes off to Andy, and Andy admires how sick what she did was. Shen returns as well, and we see that he went to get his staff. He then gives Spoil a powerful smack on its head. Shen reveals his dream to become the greatest in all of creation. His number reaches 10,000 and begins climbing even higher. Shen gives Spoil a good whack to the head, but Andy warns him not to get too close or he will begin spoiling. Shen isn't worried at all though, since he realized that Spoil put his face close to Fuko earlier and nothing happened. This means that its spoil field only surrounds its body, and it is weak when it extends its head. That's okay though, since Shen has his staff called Niue Kinko, who can extend. Andy wishes he would have used it sooner, but Shen explains that he only realized he could use it thanks to Andy. This bow staff was excavated in China, and can expand and contract at will. Shen approaches the beast, but Spoil states that he isn't going to just stand around and be hit. Shen does land an attack though, and Spoil can't understand why his body is moving towards Shen on its own. Shen attacks again, and we learn that his ability acts on a target in his field of vision. It forces his target to perform the opposite of any action it was trying to make. Spoil's dumb brain can't figure out what's going on though, so he tries to retreat, but Shen's ability makes him walk right into another attack instead. Any conscious thought that enters the target's mind is negated by Shen. However, to activate this ability, Shen must become fond of his target. This is great and all, but Andy still has no clue how they are supposed to capture a giant like this. Shen explains that there's a core inside of its body, but any living being will spoil if it gets close to it. Spoil is getting tired of getting wrecked and tries to attack, but again Shen's ability stops him. This spoil thing is insanely powerful, since it has an ability that spoils anything that gets close, and it's more powerful than Andy's regeneration. On top of that, it has a disintegration laser for distant targets. Spoil is getting irritated now, as he refuses to believe that a puny human could have such control over him with just a glance. Unfortunately for him, it's true, but Shen is happy for another reason. This monster's strength will be the reason he finally gets to see the person he has been waiting for. Our heroes try to think of a way to stop Spoil, and realize that spoiling happens because of bacteria in the air. However, bacteria need moisture, and he comes up with the idea to decrease the moisture around Spoil, and decides to create an explosion. He touches Fuko's exposed belly, and I hit him with a pen because she had a big meal earlier. Andy plans to use the gunpowder shop to blow Spoil up, but Fuko's unluck is unpredictable, and he falls through a crack in the ground instead. Spoil creates a dust cloud by destroying buildings, and Shen realizes that the monster obstructs Shen's vision to counter his ability, seemingly just forgetting about her boy Andy. Fuko comes up with a different plan. She points out that there is no moisture in space, so nothing could spoil out there. Fuko wonders if they can use the Union spaceship to take Spoil up there, but she realizes that they wouldn't survive the trip either. Shen seems to think it's a good idea though, and shakingly states that he can somehow lift Spoil and another passenger to space. This other passenger would be Andy, as we see that he is fine. The only problem with the plan is that Andy would have to endure Spoil's ability until they reach space, since they will be traveling together. Spoil did major damage to Andy earlier, but Shen wonders if Andy's old self could endure it. A look back shows how Andy keeps a card in his head to keep 100 years worth of memories bottled up. Andy agrees to Shen's plan, but gives him some stipulations. Shen sends down his staff, and has Mui give him the coordinates of the hidden monster. Mui tells them but thinks that they should all run away, as Spoil is preparing a large attack. Andy receives the coordinates though, and extends the staff. He launches himself and Spoil straight into the sky and removes the card from his skull. The staff just keeps on extending, and the two eventually end up in space. Fuko is shocked that Andy removed his card since he said he would lose control when he did that. Shen knows this well, but he's excited to witness the power of the man who once brought victory to countless battlefields. In space, Spoil thinks that their plan is silly. In Spoil's current form, he not only has spoilage at his disposal, but he also has a beam that disintegrates anything it touches. The monster destroys half of Andy's face, but it instantly regenerates, and Andy's hair turns black. Spoil is stunned by the new regeneration speed. But that isn't even the craziest part, and he uses an attack he calls division bullets. His normal finger bullets regenerate into more Andys. Spoil has no clue what is going on, but the fight is instantly over as Andy's clones decimate him. Black-haired Andy wants to have a little fun, and sends Spoil's head down with his arm. Back on Earth, Mui has made some preparations. Shen tells the kids to walk in a certain direction, so they can get picked up by the organization. Shen and Fuko still have work to do there, so he leaves the protection of all the kiddos to Ken. The kids begin their journey, so Shen assures Fuko that they will be okay because of Mui's preparations. Just then, Andy's little present comes crashing down from space. Andy uses his insane ability and regenerates himself completely from just his hand. Black-haired Andy is victorious, but Shen very seriously tells Fuko to stand back. Shen has Mui beam up Spoil's core, and Andy asks what year and month it is. Shen tells him, but Andy wants to know what day it is. Shen is shocked as it's less like Andy's memories came back, and more like he has become a different person altogether. Black-haired Andy's head begins to ache, and he becomes furious. He is talking to the Andy we know inside his head, as he tells him that he has already had his turn. Black-haired Andy thinks real Andy has wasted their life, and realizes that it's all Fuko's fault. He tells Shen to get out of the way, and Shen reveals this version of Andy as the god of victory called Victor. Victor has no clue how Shen knows about him, but doesn't care and instantly kicks him in the face. Shen is stunned since he activated his ability, and even read the trajectory of Victor's strike. Victor's strength is unreal, but Shen seems to be happier than ever. Victor is so strong that his limbs break with every attack. Humans unconsciously exercise a level of control for self-preservation, but Victor has broken free from this restriction. Victor is impressed with Shen, especially since he only has one life, and he uses several finger bullets on him. Shen is in terrible shape, so Fuko tries to use her unluck on Victor. Surprisingly, even though her unluck has never failed before, nothing happens this time. Victor seems to realize something, and Shen tells Mui to relay a message. Victor uses Andy's knowledge to determine how Fuko's unluck works, and explains that it fluctuates based on how much he likes a person. Victor looks menacing as he explains that he would never fall victim to such a pitiful ability. Victor tells Andy to give up, since he can't be killed, and threatens the sentiment to despair by eliminating Fuko. Fuko flips it on this dude and tells Andy that the two of them still have a lot left to do. They were supposed to travel, do all kinds of things, and then fall in love. There are more opportunities to discover different and surprising things, so he has to go back and keep his promise. Nothing happens though, and Victor calls her a fool. He explains that rules are absolute, and things won't change no matter what happens. Shen interrupts his little speech though, and points out that humans have immense potential. He concedes that he has lost, but is sure that this fight will make him stronger in the long run. Shen would like to fight more, but unfortunately, he is too weak now. He proclaims that all that is left for him to do now is to hurry up and honor the two promises that he made to Andy. Thickneck spins his body at ridiculous speeds and announces his first promise to protect Fuko. He lands a powerful attack, but knows in his mind that he is at best just stalling for time. Shen's other promise to Andy was to defeat him. Shen won't be able to do it himself, but the sky breaks open, and we see that he called on the other members of the Union. The other members call Andy a very troublesome rookie, and Shen assures Fuko that he is in good hands. Victor is insane though, and fears nothing. He is excited to see that he has a total of 10 opponents. He uses all his finger bullets, but each member has a shield. Victor demands that they attack, and stop only defending. The gun-wielding maniac fires a shot that ricochets off all the shields, and Victor realizes that this was their plan. Victor blows it all up though, and gets even more excited. Nico slices him in half, and Victor is surprised when he can't regenerate. Nico is some kind of genius, as he points out that Victor's regeneration slows considerably when the cut sections are burned. Nico then reveals a bit of history, as he points out that he didn't do a bunch of tests on Andy's body for 10 years for nothing. Victor compliments him on the attack and points out that it would be effective on Andy. Victor is a completely different beast though, and he explains that he can regenerate wherever he wants. Whenever his body is no longer good, he can just switch to his finger. Isshin destroys his body, but Victor is unimpressed since Isshin only uses brute force. There was nothing else behind this swing, so Victor determines that Isshin is an amateur at combat. He tells Isshin to stay out of his way, and he will spare us from death. Victor faces the others and has a good laugh. He says that it's a shame what happened to Gina, but he's excited since all of them seem like they will put up a good fight. Everyone then prepares for a fight, the Union leader included. The fight instantly begins as you attack Victor, but he is incredibly strong. She manages to slice him in half and uses this moment to tell Top to get Fuko and the injured Shen out of there. Victor is severely outnumbered, but he uses his division bullets to create several copies of himself. Top follows orders and gets them to safety because they clearly can't defend themselves. Victor is quite impressed by Top's control over his negation ability to move at such speeds, but he kicked down the staff, causing it to fall toward Top, who was running away. A weak Shen manages to say the words to get the staff to shrink enough to not crush them both. Top jumps over the barrier to escape with Shen and Fuko. Fuko thanks Top for rescuing them, but he explains that there are no thanks necessary since they are on the same team now. Fuko is still very grateful, but she wonders why this kid won't stop moving. Top explains that there really is no plan to stop Victor, and they only managed to do it last time because they had old lady Gina with them. Fuko is certain that she can get through to Andy and asks Top to take her back to him. But Top calls her crazy because she almost got killed by the guy, and now she wants to go back to talk it out. Fuko isn't listening to the kid, and just tells Shen to give her Andy's brain card. Shen first gives her a gun to protect herself, as he doesn't want Andy to get mad at him for not thinking about her safety. Top is stunned to see that Shen believes in her as he gives her the card, and she begins running back. Top wants Shen to talk some sense into her, but Shen explains that if Fuko were that easy to stop, then she wouldn't be alive today. Top realizes that there is no stopping her, so he goes to pick her up. Fuko thanks him for helping her, and he just hopes that she has a plan. She formally introduces herself, and Top is shocked that this little brat wants to get acquainted at a time like this. He introduces himself, and she calls him the real brat since he's only 15 years old. Back at the war, Victor is getting destroyed left and right, and Victor finds out just how sturdy Isshin is. Isshin grabs Victor, and Phil uses a powerful beam to eliminate Victor, but Isshin is completely unharmed. Victor determines that Isshin must have some sort of hardening ability, and a child with laser ability must have a body completely made up of artifacts. The kid blasts away, and we see Victor fighting their leader. Juiz has a flaming sword, and Victor instantly realizes that it's the work of the burn. Top returns with Fuko, and is stunned when he sees how many Victors there are. Fuko had no clue he could even do that, but Top says it's a huge problem. They can't even tell them apart, and there's no way to know what the real Victor is. Victor challenges every single union member, but Fuko somehow determines that the one fighting the boss is the real Andy. Top says he looks just like all the others, but Fuko points out that he is the only one with a katana, so she tells Top to take her to him. Victor is busy fighting the boss, but is instantly stunned when Fuko jumps on him. Everyone else is stunned as well because Fuko decided to go skin to skin with him. The other Victors burst, but Top still has his doubts about her plan. Fuko simply says maybe it might work, and we see that Top still can't stop moving. Everyone is just spectating now, and Fuko explains that if she stays latched onto him in this way, no matter how much she dislikes him, a big stroke of unlucky is sure to come eventually. Once he gets nice and weak, all she will have to do is stick the card back into his brain. Juiz wants to know a time frame for how long it will take, but Fuko has no clue. She has never clung on to someone she has hated for long. If it were Andy, then the stroke of unluck would come quickly, so Juiz decides to change the plan. She ignites her sword and tells Fuko that she will have to bring back Andy's personality for a split second. If Fuko can impart her unluck on him at that moment, then they might be able to win. Victor is insulted and explains that he is the original. Andy is putting up quite the fight inside of him, but Victor promises that he will never see the light of day again. Victor creates more copies, but Top quickly saves her. Victor creates even more, but the other union members show off their skills while taking them out. Victor points out that they must have defeated Burn, which means they have another seat. If they let him eliminate Fuko, then they will have 2 open seats, and he can find stronger negators to fill the roles. Juiz instantly attacks him and explains that those who lack justice and ambition can never influence the actions of others. Victor sends her flying, but this just gets her upset, and she issues an order to defeat all the copies while protecting Fuko. Outside the barrier, Shen has his staff returned to him. Back at the fight, Juiz is overwhelmed, and the other union members are just barely managing to save Fuko. They remind her that she is supposed to be focusing on bringing Andy back, so she starts calling out to him. Victor nearly shoots her directly, but Top appears out of nowhere. Top encourages her to keep talking to Andy, but he gets hit and is amazed that Victor was able to predict where he was going. Fuko racks her brain trying to think of a way to bring Andy out, and she thinks about how they have only known each other for about 1 month. So much has happened, but she still doesn't know a thing about Andy. Things seem hopeless, but she can't give up. Just like on the first day they met, when Andy saved her over and over again. She refuses to give up and comes up with an idea. Fuko shoots this dude right through the scar on his forehead, and jams her thumb inside. She noticed that his scar wasn't on any of the copies, so she realized that that must be where Andy was being locked up. She jams her thumb deeper and demands that he give Andy back. Fuko tells Andy not to let Victor beat him, and all he has to do is touch her for 1 second. If he does that, then she will give him the biggest stroke of unluck anyone has ever seen. Just then, the bleeding stops, and Andy tells her that her idea sounds like a treat. Fuko has never been happier to see him, and Andy wastes no time in giving her a kiss. Everyone watches as all the clones disappear, and the tender moment lasts for a minute. Andy removes her finger from his skull, and he tells her that they will pick up where they left off another time. Fuko sheepishly acts like she doesn't know what he is talking about, and runs off while telling him that it would only happen in his dreams. Fuko then screams out to all the perverts that were just watching, and warns them that a huge stroke of unluck is coming. Juiz commands them to get as far away as possible, but Victor has already returned, and he tells them that they won't get away. Unfortunately for Victor, Shen has used his ability on him. Shen reveals that he lied about his target needing to be within a certain distance. The truth is that he only needs to be able to see his target. Fuko's unluck arrives in the form of several meteors, and Shen hopes to see Victor again one day. Victor has a good laugh, as it's been a very long time since he was defeated by humans, and the meteors come crashing down. This is by far the biggest stroke of unluck yet, which was to be expected since Andy kissed Fuko. The Union members protect themselves from the shock wave, and the aftermath of the damage is insane. The town has been decimated, and a giant crater is in its place. The entire situation is unreal, and Top realizes that Fuko is nowhere to be found. She is making her way into the crater, but they have no clue what this little dummy is planning to do all by herself. This is incredibly dangerous, as the water will soon be flooding in. But Fuko is on a mission to return Andy's card to his head. She finally makes it to him, and Victor tells her that she is one heck of a girl. Fuko jams the card back in his head, and pleads for Andy to return to her. The process doesn't seem to be working, and the water comes crashing down. Sometime later, Fuko wakes up and immediately calls out to Andy. He is right there next to her, and he reveals that he ended up reading the One Piece manga she likes. Fuko has no words for him at first, but then demands to know why he did something so dangerous. He and Shen made the deal to remove the card from his head, and they didn't tell her anything. If the other members of the round table didn't show up, then Andy wouldn't be around anymore, and she would be all alone again. Andy apologizes, but she is shocked when he touches her head. Andy doesn't care and explains that when he was trapped in the darkness, all he could hear was her voice. It made him happy, so he thanked her. What's most surprising to her is that it's the first time he has called her by her name. But Andy just says that it's almost time for their meeting. Fuko wants him to say it again, but he just tells her to hurry up and get ready. Fuko cries, but it's out of happiness, since Andy is back to normal. Fuko wonders who her new little friend is, and Andy explains that Tatiana dropped it off when they came to see her. All the little orphans came to see her too and made her a little drawing. The Union's orphanage will take care of the parentless children until they turn 18, and Andy points out that those kids have a strong will to survive. Fuko hopes that their memories of their teacher won't turn into bad memories, and Andy doubts that they will. He married that teacher, and he knew that she felt so strongly about all of them. He is sure that powerful emotions reach their destination without spoiling, just like Fuko did. In typical Andy fashion, he credits himself for his inspirational words, and proclaims that it's not too bad for a guy who has been alive for 200 years. He is certain that it will make him more likable, but his speech is interrupted by the stroke of unluck from touching Fuko's head. Top welcomes the two lovebirds to the meeting, and Fuko apologizes for being late. He points out that her boyfriend is burning, but Fuko is quick to point out that they aren't lovebirds. Everyone is pretty lighthearted, but Juiz tells them to sit down. Andy is now ranked 9th, and he explains that it's because of the clothing incident. Everyone is seated, so Juiz has Apocalypse announce the quest results. The book opens up and prepares to reveal the results of the 6 quests given to them. Elsewhere, we can hear that someone is tied up to a chair and is in really bad shape, but we cannot see this person. The guy watching him reveals that the tied up guy is the Negator Unseen. The guy is fascinated by Unseen, since he is a self-targeting compulsory activation type. When Unseen shuts his eyes, his body and anything he recognizes as his property become invisible. The strange thing is that the blood coming from his stomach is still visible. Rip explains that he doesn't want Unseen to run off on him, so he cuts open his stomach and puts a homing device inside his body. Rip promises that if Unseen joins his group, then he will deactivate his ability. If not, then Unseen's wound will not heal until dies. Rip claims Unseen is his property and refuses to give him to the other group. Back at the round table, Fuko was shocked to learn that she had been unconscious for days. Andy isn't shocked at all though, since Fuko isn't used to moving around so much. Apocalypse then announces their results. The first quest was the capture of Uma Burn. The participants were Juiz, Billy, Tatiana, Isshin, Phil, and Top. They were successful, and the reward was the addition of an 11th seat, so one more negator may now be added to the round table. They were also successful in the second quest, the capture of Uma Eat. Apocalypse pukes out a weird-looking globe and reminds them that the reward for the second quest is the location of the Negator Unburn. A point appears on the map, and the exact location of Unburn will be shown for the next 7 days. Unburn will not know that their location has been revealed. Apocalypse states that they can catch them if they need them, but it's unlikely since they already captured Burn. They also completed the quest that required the neutralization of the Uma language. The reward for this is shockingly the unification of all the world's languages. We then see how great an effect these rewards can have on the entire world, as all languages are unified into English. All the memories and cultures of all non-negators are altered so things can keep going smoothly. Shen contacts Mui, and he wonders if she is wearing her necktie, but she isn't, as she's busy working on her gains. Shen speaks to her using their normal language without his tie on, but that language no longer exists, and Mui can't understand. confirming the unification of all languages. Next is the successful capture of the Uma past, and the reward is the location of the artifact Rebellion. Quest 5 was the capture of Uma Spoil, which we see was a success as he is imprisoned. Another pin is put on the planet, and it's for the location of Uma Unrepair. Fuko gets super hyped about this one, since Unrepair might be able to give Andy the real death he desperately wants. However, she is surprised when he doesn't share her enthusiasm. Just when it seemed like they could have completed all the quests, they didn't. The quest to capture the Negator Unseen failed. They expected this though, since anyone who was sent to get information about Unseen ended up dying. Their bound bodies ended up in a deserted area, and all of them bled to death. Because of this, Andy assumes that Unseen was taken by Unrepair. Since all quests were not completed, they will now receive a penalty. This penalty is the addition of Uma Galaxy, so the crazy book begins to puke something out. Everyone is shocked by the enormous size of the creature appearing before them, but the more mature members seem bored. Once the monster stops growing, Apocalypse releases it into the air, and Andy wonders if it's trying to get to the surface. Juice calls on Uma Move to take action, and Fuko remembers that he was the one who brought her and Andy there. Uma was commanded to move to take them to the surface, so the ground broke. Andy takes hold of Fuko, and the two fall together. Apocalypse explains that Uma Galaxy has been added, a new rule that the world will now believe has always existed. This psychotic book laughs like a demon, and wonders if the Negators will be able to overcome this penalty. The Union arrives on the surface, which Andy assumes is Australia. Uma Move has done his job transporting them and now expects to see quite the show. Juiz agrees with him and promises to give him a front row seat to what she calls her justice move. Move leaves, and Fuko states that she thought this so-called penalty would be a lot scarier. Juiz is quick to tell her just how wrong she is. They are dealing with a that was added by Apocalypse, and they always possess rules that lead to humanity's ruin. There is no exception, and they prepare as the alteration is about to begin. Just then, the thing that came out of Apocalypse's mouth bursts into space. Some kind of core forms, and a galaxy appears. Stars fill the sky, and Top thinks it looks pretty amazing. Juiz asks Nico for some kind of correction, and Nico is already on it. The new changes that are now common knowledge to everyone in existence are not common knowledge to the Negators, because their memories were not changed. Nico speaks to his team of researchers, who are not Negators, and instructs them to give him their knowledge. It all pours into Nico's brain, and he reveals that this galaxy is a cluster of celestial bodies like Earth. This penalty spawned a slew of these Earth-like bodies, along with systems involving them, such as myths and days of the week. It also introduced the concept of extraterrestrial life forms called aliens, and at this very moment, those aliens are invading them. Just then, a giant spaceship appears before them. They are enemies that were born moments ago, from the alteration to a world that always had a galaxy. But that's not what they perceive, since to them, they always existed, born on a planet with several 100 million years of history. These aliens trained themselves to become soldiers, then they were given ships to invade other planets. Their planet is on a path to ruin, so they are looking for a new place to call home. A giant alien then reveals himself and introduces his race of aliens as something called an axe. He very bluntly explains that they are invading their planet to make it their home. Juiz walks right up to this giant dude and introduces herself as the planet's representative. This alien is very generous and tells her that they plan to use her kind as slaves, as long as they don't resist. But if they do resist, they will all be eliminated. Juiz fears no one, so she rejects both options and tells them to leave. This crazy alien demonstrates his immense power with a huge attack and reveals that the Axe have done their research. The human planet is underdeveloped, and they have yet to make any advancements in space. Humankind has no chance of winning against them in battle, so it will just be genocide. You wonder if that is his vision of justice, and he states that it is. This being the case, Juiz removes her helm and states that she will simply have to negate that justice. This is when we learn that her negating ability is called injustice. Of course, the alien has no clue what that is, but he is shocked when his ships begin exploding. Things get even more unbelievable as he can only watch as his ships fire at each other. This terrifyingly powerful alien has no clue what happened and falls to his knees defeated. Juiz calls out to Andy and Fuko and tells them to watch closely, as this is what a penalty entails. They manage to avoid the situation this time with her ability, but depending on the member involved, it could have just as easily been game over. This was the 99th penalty added, and they can't afford it anymore. Andy wonders why, so Juiz explains that they uncovered a stone tablet at the same time as Apocalypse. That tablet has 101 slots. Each time they receive a penalty, one slot gets filled. There is only one open slot left until it reaches 100. Beyond that lies the final penalty, the one called Ragnarok. It's a word that denotes the end, and to protect their planet, they must prevent that at all costs. The huge problem they have now is that Apocalypse won't open unless they have all the seats filled at the round table. They have 11 seats now after passing the burn quest, so they are down one person. If they don't fill that seat, they will receive a penalty in 3 months before they can take up any more quests. This means that their absolute most important priority right now is to secure an 11th member. The alien wonders who these crazy people are, and Jewis can't believe he is still there. Her ability should have made him take his own life, but that's good for her as she wants him to spread a message throughout all of space, and that is to keep their hands off planet Earth. The alien is terrified until reports out of there. We learn that this was mankind's first interaction with aliens, but it would also be the last, as all contact would cease thereafter. Jewis reminds her team that they have learned the whereabouts of Uma Burn and Unrepair because of the rewards. Andy is certain that Jewis wants to go after Unrepair first, and volunteers to go. If Unrepair's ability is true to its name, Andy is certain that one attack will prove to be fatal. Jewis accepts his decision and instructs Tatiana to go with him as backup. Fuko is assigned to the mission as well, and Andy's glad that he will be able to pay everyone back for helping him out when he was trapped in Victor. Sometime later, our heroes arrive in Brazil, where they will search for Unrepair. Fuko panics like a weirdo inside a mall as she is surrounded by celebrities. Andy explains that he is ready, and the nervous Fuko scolds him for leaving her alone for so long. She doesn't fit in there at all, and she nearly dies of embarrassment. Her anger turns to shock as her boy Andy shows off a type of suit he hasn't worn in a while. Fuko thinks he looks like a celebrity, and Andy just wants to know if she likes what she sees. Fuko gets nervous, and Andy approaches her. We then get a look back to just a few hours ago, as our heroes travel in Union's private jet. They discuss a black market auction, an auction that deals with negators, UMAS, and artifacts that the organization hasn't been able to manage. This operation was taken down at some point, but it looks like they're back in business. The guys behind it are mafia from all over the world. They always hold it in random locations, so tracking the auction down is no easy task. Jewis somehow managed to find it, and the next auction will be held tomorrow at midnight. It will be on a fancy yacht docked at the port of Rio de Janeiro. Unrepair will likely be there, but they don't know if he will be buying or selling. The plan is for them to infiltrate the ship as guests, using some passes that Nico made them. Only a select few celebrities are allowed aboard, so they have to disguise themselves. Back to the present, Fuko gets uncomfortable when trying on far too revealing clothing. She is used to covering herself up, and she blames Andy for picking out skimpy outfits for her to try. Andy has a legitimate reason, as he explains that they need a lot of surface area to make sure big strokes of unluck occur. Fuko thinks he is just being selfish, as that could cause innocent people to get injured. Andy confidently explains that the night will end with her being his girl, and he's not letting anyone else lay their hands on her. Andy explains that the people on this ship buy people with money, so they aren't innocent bystanders. Andy hands her some more outfits to try, but she quickly notices that he once again snuck in some skimpy stuff. Another look back shows Fuko asking Jewis why she chose to assign her to the mission. Andy and Tatiana are both really strong, but Fuko fears that she will just drag them down. Jewis explains that she is simply acting by her vision of justice. Her justice is to protect their planet and the innocent people who inhabit it. It's the same reason she ordered Shen and Void to eliminate Andy and Fuko a while back. They were just too dangerous. However, their recent fight against Victor has made her realize something. If they can somehow manage to control Fuko's unluck ability, then it might just be powerful enough to kill God. Fuko isn't ready now though, and Ragnarok is drawing near as well. Jewis then shocks Fuko with her next request. She wants Fuko to continue to work closely with Andy and fall in love with him. Back to the present, Fuko gets tired of trying on dresses. Andy likes the last one though, and helps her fix her posture. Andy thinks it's a 10 out of 10, so they go with it. At a hotel, Fuko gets nervous around all the people, so Andy suggests that they go for a walk. On this little walk, our boy Andy boldly brings up the unluck that they brought when they were fighting Victor. It was when they kissed, so Andy wanted to get some of that sweet unluck for himself. Fuko takes off running, but Andy just wants a meteor shower of his own. Andy is jealous because he was the one who kissed her, but Victor was the one who got the stroke of unluck. Fuko declares that she only gives big strokes of unluck out of necessity, so she plans to use a small one to get him off her back. Andy tries to kiss her instead, but Fuko refuses. She takes off her gloves and tells Clothy to expose Andy's chest. Clothy does just that, so Fuko touches skin to skin with Andy. Clothy just now realizes that the unluck is going to hurt him too, but it's too late as a truck comes bearing in to hit Andy. Fuko apologizes to Clothy but promises to give him his favorite food later, a ball of yarn. Andy then becomes shark food, so Fuko realizes that it was a combo-style stroke of unluck. Things get a bit serious as Andy explains that he doesn't know who Victor is. He doesn't even know himself for that matter. Victor mentions something about being the original, so Andy thinks that might be true, especially since he doesn't have any memories of his childhood. Andy warns Fuko that Victor could appear again one day, and prepares to ask her for a favor. Fuko interrupts him though, and simply states that if that happens, then she will use her luck to save Andy, as many times as he needs. They prepare to go get ready for the auction, but Fuko realizes that they just touched again. This stroke of luck causes Tatiana to crash down on her boy, and she goes over the plan. The two of them will be going undercover while Tatiana infiltrates from somewhere else. They will search for Unrepair from the inside, and she will cover the outside. Tatiana gives Fuko a tie for her dress that will replace the tie that Union members wear. Tatiana then embarrasses Fuko when she reminds them that they're going to be disguised as a married couple, and she tells them to do their best. That night, the two arrive at the ship, and Andy tells his darling wife to get ready. After they board the ship, it sets off, and Andy reminds Fuko to stay focused. They are about to enter society's underbelly, so he doesn't want her to think about righting the wrongs they will surely see around them. Fuko overhears some rich dude talking about something called cryptids, and he explains that they are likely talking about Umas. Fuko is horrified when the rich dude talks about cooking the Uma, and Andy reminds her to stop listening to the grotesque conversation. They overhear some other conversation about a rumor that says a negator will be the main item for this auction. However, negators are supposedly easier to find now more than ever. Andy blames it on the fact that all languages have been unified thanks to the quest. Languages being unified is only the case for normal people though, not negators. He reminds Fuko that she can only understand Shen because of the necktie they wear. Every normal person in the world speaks English now, so the negators who don't speak English stick out like sore thumbs. Negators being easier to find isn't a terrible thing though, since it means they will be easier to find for the Union as well. Fuko then wonders if it's better for negators to join the Union or to be auctioned off. Andy thinks it's the same either way since they will either die in a quest or become some rich person's plaything. Fuko wonders about the negator being auctioned off and thinks about how she might be able to relate to them, not knowing the logic behind their abilities, and not knowing what they should or shouldn't do. Andy explains that he used to think that negators had only 3 paths to take in life. They could accept their ability and lead their life, they could fall into despair and choose death, or they could double down and embrace a life of crime. He realizes now that there is a 4th option, and that's killing the source, God. After meeting the others, he realized that they don't have to accept, give up, or double down on anything. They can fight. Elsewhere on the ship, we see that Unrepair is being told that a certain area is off limits. He tries to convince the guards to let him through with his girlfriend, but only ends up getting a gun to his face instead. The Mafia guard explains that it will be his last warning, but Unrepair asks the girl named Latla if he will die. Latla can see what will happen and explains that Unrepair will get shot in the head. Unrepair decides that won't be happening, and moves at an insane speed. The Mafia guys take severe damage, and they can't understand how this guy managed to cut them so accurately in such a short amount of time. They can't even move their hands, and realize that they were cut with surgical precision. Unrepair whistles for his pet named Kane to come to him, and shockingly we find that Kane is a huge monster. Kane tosses 2 blobs onto the ship, and Unrepair tells Latla that she should have come aboard the same way. She gets really upset though, as she doesn't want to get covered in bile. Unrepair tells Latla that he won't need his suit jacket anymore because they're going to be running wild soon. The big guy named Creed wonders if what they are looking for is really on the ship, and Unrepair confirms that there is one. Creed has a good laugh since Latla's fortune telling was wrong, but she says that it was just this one time. Unrepair tries to welcome the little guy named Feng, but Feng only speaks Chinese. Unrepair speaks Chinese to thank him for coming, but Feng retorts that it's not necessary. Latla tosses the suit off the ship, but we see that Tatiana overheard everything. She then informs the others, stating that there were 4 of them and at least 2 of them are negators. They seem to be after the negator being put up for auction. Juiz hears this as well and determines that they are negator hunters. This group has come up quite a bit as of late, and they are likely the ones that took the negator unseen. This group shares common ground with the Union, as they both specialize in collecting negators by force. There is a big difference between them though. The Union seeks to kill God to be freed of the rules. The Hunters, on the other hand, seek revenge against the world. If the negators they collect prove worthless, then they dispose of them. Juiz realizes though that they actually share that last part in common. Fuko says that she rejects that idea. The reason she tried to take her life was to protect others. Fuko then gets herself prepared and takes off her shoes. She acknowledges that the powers of a negator can be painful and sad to deal with. However, that doesn't make it okay to take it out on the world. Andy gets hyped up by his fake wife's speech, and the two prepare for battle. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.